All right, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about Terence Crawford and Yordenis Ugas, and an inside source saying that without a doubt, Terence Crawford is the #1 welterweight in the world over Errol Spence Jr., over Yordenis Ugas, and definitely over Manny Pacquiao. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back. So Terence Crawford is somebody that, has been taking a lot of abuse lately, definitely on this channel, as far as, the level of competition that he's fought at welterweight. Haven't been really happy with that at all, and has, as a result, have had him as the #2 welterweight in the world, #2 welterweight in the world, behind Errol Spence Jr. But according to my sources and guys that I trust a lot, they're saying that, look, at this point in time, from everything that we see, the Terence Crawford deserves to be called the top welterweight in the world, and that is, included out of a group of Yordenis Ugas, Errol Spence Jr., Manny Pacquiao, Terence Crawford, himself, Sean Porter, and guys like that, and that it's time to really give and accept that Terence Crawford is the best guy out of the bunch. Now, that is not something that I'm accepting willy-nilly, because I believe that it's something that you have to actually prove in the boxing ring, and that of all the guys that are in the welterweight division, Terence Crawford has done the least actually inside the ring in order to be considered the best guy there. And more importantly, that all of these fights have to actually transpire and take place inside the boxing ring in order to actually know who the best fighter is. But, from what I've seen on Terence Crawford, Terence hasn't taken a step forward at all towards proving it. Now, there is a fight that is upcoming, was supposed to be upcoming, between Terence Crawford and Sean Porter. Knock on wood that actually, is made. That would be the first time that Terence Crawford has really crossed and fought one of the best guys in the welterweight division. But, the logic goes that if you look at the way Terence Crawford fights and the way and the circumstances that are going on in the welterweight division right now, that the welterweight division is ripe for Terence Crawford to really, run across it. And it might actually be what drives him to really start taking serious fights, in the welterweight division. The main thing is, and people have been talking about this for a long time, for several years, is the situation between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford, right? And so I have for years been a big backer of Errol Spence Jr. over Terence Crawford, because Errol has been the guy that has actually been fighting the people that are out there. He's the guy that fought Mikey Garcia. He's fought Danny Garcia. He's fought Sean Porter. He would have fought Manny Pacquiao, but the big if is because of the car accident that he had, and the fact that he now has an injured retina. And so some people are saying, look, man, with all of this wear and tear on Errol Spence's body, you just don't know whether or not Errol Spence Jr. is going to be reliable, down the road, right? So, pretty much we can now start leaning towards Terence Crawford as being Terence Crawford being the top guy. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me only a little bit, except for the fact that these fights actually have to take place. But, I will give in that if you look at what's going on with like Yordenis Ugas is the WBA champion, and I think Yordenis Ugas is pretty much tailor-made for Terence Crawford to beat. And I think that Terence Crawford would dominate Yordenis Ugas. Yordenis Ugas is somebody whose style I think really fits Terence Crawford, in that he's aggressive, and he's going to give Terence Crawford a lot of opportunities to find holes, in his game, and set him up with the kind of way that Terence Crawford starts the boxing match off slow and is looking for gaps. But Yordenis Ugas is flat-footed. He doesn't have a whole lot of foot speed, so I don't think that he's going to really be able to catch Terence Crawford while Terence Crawford is trying to figure him out and set him up. Also, if Terence Crawford gets into exchanges with Yordenis Ugas, I don't really think that there's a whole lot there for Terence Crawford to be worried about, because Yordenis Ugas isn't necessarily the biggest power puncher in the world. And I don't think he really does bring, that he doesn't bring, that type of one punch power that I think is really gonna, make problems for Terence Crawford in that regard. So, to me, it looks like, I would definitely rank him, Terence Crawford, ahead of Yordenis Ugas, regardless of what happened with the Manny Pacquiao fight. I still maintain that, that Yordenis Ugas is a very good fighter, but, his big claim to fame, in the welterweight division, is a fight over, a suspect loss against Sean Porter, where a lot of people thought he won the fight. Personally, I thought Yordenis Ugas lost the fight. I thought that he had a problem dealing with the fact that Yordenis Ugas, that Sean Porter could fight him on the outside and never really let Yordenis Ugas do anything when his feet was set. And I think that that's going to be pretty much the same type of issue that you see in a Yordenis Ugas versus Terence Crawford fight, where Terence Crawford is not going to be there allowing Yordenis Ugas to set his feet and really start wearing him down to the body, like he does over the course of the fight, where Manny Pacquiao, with his legs not being there at the advanced age that he was really right there, to be hit by Yordenis Ugas. And then, of course, the whole Manny Pacquiao thing is like, it's time for Manny Pacquiao to pretty much, chalk it, to retire and move on. So I don't consider him to be a top welterweight at all. The only issue is as far as this goes, is the Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. And, for me personally, like I say, you got to actually prove this stuff in the ring. But my understanding is, from the people that I talked about, is like, look, you're gonna, people are gonna have to accept that, Errol Spence Jr. after that car accident is never really going to be the same fighter that he was, because he's always going to be dealing with the injuries and things that are going to accumulate, right? Because once you really get your your whole body damaged like that, you may not have had any broken bones or ligaments or anything like that, but you have your bones themselves, your organs. Apparently your eyes have had that amount of stress put on them that, that they could have things like very microscopic injuries that aren't really being looked for or being detected, but over time, can really add up. So, I would hope that, this car accident that Errol Spence Jr. is in isn't really what, answers the question about who the who the best welterweight in the world is, and that we can actually get to a fight for undisputed to take place between the three of these guys. But, people are telling me that, this is more, this is severe enough where that, over the next couple years, that you may only see Errol Spence Jr. in the ring, for a few years and not see him fight continually. And if that's the case, then Terence Crawford can sit up, on top of that division and pretty much dominate that division. Now, the question for me is going to be, well, let's see that after the Sean Porter fight and see how he does with Sean Porter, and whether or not he's going to be able to get past Sean Porter, because that is actually a very, very real fight. It's not hypothetical. And Sean Porter is somebody that's been in the ring with everybody, and he is a very, very intelligent fighter. But, as far as Yordenis Ugas, I'll agree that I do think Terence Crawford dominates him. The question with Errol Spence Jr. in his eye is a legitimate one. And, that Terence Crawford is poised to be the top guy in the welterweight division. But, at the end of the day, he's going to have to prove it by fighting. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.